You might have heard that it doesn't take much to get arrested in Russia. A blank piece of paper will just about do it. But what about getting in trouble with the law for having a dream about Volodymyr Zelensky? In late 2022, Ivan from the city of Chita shared a bizarre dream he'd recently had on his Instagram stories. In the dream, Ivan was spared from execution by the Ukrainian army because Volodymyr Zelensky was a fan of his Insta stories. However, the law enforcement saw a serious offense in Ivan's dream and fired him $300 for discreditation of the Russian army.
There are 6 separate incidents that they are trying to charge me with, the description of the dream being one of them. Some 40 or 50-year-old FSB agent was seriously transcribing my Instagram story where I described my dream, which is hilarious, and I think the joke's on them and on their job descriptions. They're clearly doing a better job discrediting the armed forces than I am.
Perplexed by the absurd charge, Ivan spoke to several media outlets, including TV Rain and the BBC. But what he didn't know was that publicly sharing his story was just another way of discrediting the Russian army. Soon, he received 2 additional charges for both interviews. The next one would lead to a criminal offense. This was where Ivan made his final mistake. He posted one of his interviews on his Instagram feed. Shortly after, another court order arrived. Ivan was criminally charged for sharing an interview where he talked about receiving a fine for having a dream about Volodymyr Zelensky. He was fined $1,200, and his offense weapon, his mobile phone, was confiscated. Ivan's story is just one of countless mind-boggling cases appearing all over Russia since the start of the full-scale war. So what other unpatriotic actions could land you in legal trouble in modern Russia? Fearing the Ukrainian army. Roxana and Lisan were browsing a local furniture store when one of them expressed her fears over the possibility of Ukrainian drone strikes on the city. The store's owner overheard the conversation and promptly reported it to the police. Soon, 15 police officers showed up at the woman's doorstep and searched the apartment without a warrant or prior notice. The perpetrators, Roxana and Lisan, were then taken to the police station for further investigation. Unpatriotic likes. Liking a photo of the Ukrainian flag in a private group with 40 people was enough to discredit the Russian army for Ksenia from Krasnodar. She was fined $300 for the like. The same happened to Alexei from Barnaul, who added a sad emoji reaction to someone's anti-war post on the Russian social network OK.ru. Naturally occurring displays of extremism. A policeman in Moscow spotted a white flag on a car's number plate. He deemed this a demonstration of extremist symbols. A similar flag is often used by the anti-war, anti-Putin paramilitary organization, the Free Russia Legion, recently declared a terrorist group by the Kremlin. The policeman began the arrest of the car owner, Olga, and asked a passerby, 65-year-old Nina, to act as a witness. He then realized that Nina's car too had the white flag on the number plate. Nina explained that the red had simply faded due to sun exposure and showed the plate on the back of the car, which was already turning pink. Nevertheless, both women were arrested and charged with displaying extremist symbols. Olga was put in jail to await her trial. And simply being at the wrong place at the wrong time. Taras was passing by an anti-war protest in Tomsk and stopped to see what the commotion was. Apparently, he should have known better, as according to the local court, this was just an act of expressing silent support for the unlawful goals of the gathering and expressing solidarity with the active participants of the illegal public event. Taras was arrested and fined $300 for, you guessed it, discrediting the Russian army. Currently, there are over 6,000 registered cases of this offense. But what is the point of enforcing a bizarre charge?
The cases that you described, which don't contain any real statements regarding the war, specifically or armed forces, the fact that they're using blank sheets of paper or censored cursing as evidence is obviously absurd and proves that this legislation was passed only with the intent to paralyze Russian civil society and to completely outlaw any discussion of the war.
Unfortunately, not all of such cases end with a fine. A seemingly harmless anti-war drawing by a 12-year-old Maria from the Tula region was enough to have her removed from home by the Child Protection Services. Her father, Alexei, who had been raising her alone, was then prosecuted and sentenced to 2 years in prison for allegedly discrediting the Russian army on Facebook. Maria, placed in a heavily guarded orphanage, was repeatedly threatened to be put up for adoption until her mother agreed to take her in. But there is also a more severe version of this offense called the spread of knowingly untruthful information about the use of the Russian armed forces. Introduced into the federal law in March of 2022, it's almost always punished by a prison sentence. And yes, posting on social media is enough for a conviction. 61-year-old Volodymyr Zelensky is currently serving 3 years in prison for reposting anti-war content on his contacted page. And Victoria, who posted anti-war videos online, was forcibly committed to a mental institution for refusing to plead guilty to the charge. There, she was subjected to torture and public humiliation by the staff. This appalling law has already resulted in the imprisonment of numerous public figures, activists, journalists, politicians, and regular citizens for simply opposing the war. Some have received longer sentences than those convicted of first-degree murder. Which sheds light to the disturbing reality of what is allowed to be said in Russian society today, be it publicly or privately, and what is met with severe punishment.